This conference will now be recorded.
So, Eric, excited to have you on the podcast today. And so, for everyone that's tuning in, tell us a little about your background and your journey to your current role.
This conference will now be recorded.
Hey, Brett. Thanks for having me. I guess to start things off, I grew up. See, I'm a New York native, so I grew up in New York. Obviously, growing up with soccer as well. I have a big soccer family. And my first kind of gig out of sports was working for the U.S. Open tennis tournament. So I was that guy that ran around in the suites and made sure all the gifts and all the activation stuff was prepared. So it was a pretty cool gig just to kick things off, and I actually got it by luck. So it's pretty cool. I guess a little bit afterwards, I ran into trying to figure out how do I stay in sports. Once you're in, it's really hard to get out. And I ran into the MLS Sales Center, and yourself and kind of everybody that we work with as well. So I did that for about a month and a half. Back then, it was a month and a half or a little bit less. Went through the program, learned a lot, and got placed at Sporting Kansas City. So I was there selling seats, tickets, premium, and a little bit of sponsorship as well. I worked under Jake Reed, who is now the president of Sporting Kansas City. So I was there for about 2 years, opened up that stadium, and got an opportunity to go back to New York. After a while, 2 years is enough of barbecue and country music. Although I'm a big fan now, but I got an opportunity to work with the New York Cosmos, so they moved me into a managerial role, and I wanted to kind of test myself and see if I could run a squad on my own. So I got in as the manager of ticket sales. And then once we started things off and created a game plan as to how we're going to kick off the new revival of the team, they moved me up to director of ticket sales and consumer marketing as well. So after that, there's a little bit of changes that happening with the team, so I decided to kind of look elsewhere. I think I learned enough there to kind of take another step in the career. So I did a little stint with the Copa America tournament. So I worked out in San Francisco for about a year. No, about a month and a half, working out with those games that were going on over there. And that's kind of where this thing started to roll with core software. And I ran into a couple folks who were talking about it, and it sounded like something that a lot of teams were using or a lot of teams were interested in. So I did reach out. There was one mutual contact, but what I did was kind of go the old-fashioned way and talk to the main person who was running things. And, after about a month, they brought me on board to start conversating with a lot of not only soccer teams, but, top 5 sports leagues as well. Trying to talk to them and see what kind of business setup they have and if there's a fit for core as well. And now currently doing a little bit of sales, doing a little bit of marketing, and doing a little bit of strategy work into different markets as well. So I can't believe I just squished my whole sports career in about 2 minutes there, but hopefully I got all of it.
Yeah. And so, one of the interesting things, and one of the questions I want to ask is, the time at the Cosmos. There's a lot of times where teams always complain about it's tough to sell tickets when the team is losing. You were selling tickets while the league was dying. Like, how do you try? What's the challenge of in a city like New York City trying to draw people into a brand where the league could go away any year? How do you sell that? How do you draw people to it?
Yeah, and plus we had NYCFC come up that same year too, so it was a pretty hard sell, honestly. Every day was a struggle, but what we relied on and what we built up to that point was a good fan structure. Sometimes we would get games where it's 3,000, and then some games where we get 8,000 folks at one of their games. So we really relied on the folks that we kind of reached out to that first year and created a good bond with them. We made the game itself, the experience itself, really good for the family. So they brought out their soccer teams, they brought out their companies, and after a while, they knew that at some point it was going to die, and we knew that at some point it was going to go away. But those fans were really there, and they wanted to keep the team alive, and so did we. So that's kind of, I think, what's helped us out, to stay afloat, basically. But no, you're right. It was pretty tough, but it was fun. You kind of got to know a lot of fans, and you built that personal connection with them.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think you guys did a very good job of building a sense of community around that organization. And you guys switched stadiums quite a few times. You guys, were in and out of, almost dying, coming back, all those different things. What specifically did you do with the fans to build that sense of community? Was it something the organization actually did, or did it come down to the relationships between the sales reps and the people that they had in their pipeline?
Yeah, no, I think the majority of work was done with the reps and the service reps that we had. They really built that connection. We had a lot of marketing campaigns that we did with, our season ticket holders, our package holders, and our single game holders, where they really felt that kind of connection to the reps. Like, we had certain reps that knew when the season ticket holders' son's birthday was, so we would not only call them, but sometimes we would send them a gift right to their house. I mean, a lot of organizations do that, but we basically did that with every fan that we had, because we had to. We knew that we had to set a personal connection with them in order to keep them coming. And sometimes when they didn't come, we kind of played the, well, no, why didn't you come factor, which really made them come a little bit more too. We really wanted to see them, and I think that's kind of how that's what I learned, at Sporting and at the sales center too. Setting that personal connection with them, you learn more with those questions, and that's kind of what we did.
Facing all the factors you guys faced, I thought that you and the team there did a really good job. So, one of the questions I always ask, the people that come on, who are some of the best mentors or salespeople that you've been around along your journey? And, most specifically, what was it about them that stood out to you as people you wanted to emulate or learn from?
Yeah. Well, the way I started off with that question is a big mentor that I had, obviously, is my mom. She's not a salesperson, but she really brought that kind of perseverance kind of factor, which really played a lot into my life. But that's by far the biggest mentor I have. In terms of kind of sports career, I would say Rich Searles at the Cosmos really helped me out as well. He really not only understood kind of the rep side, but also the sales side. And he, I wouldn't say he was too salesy, but he understood kind of the things that needed to be said and the questions needed to be asked in order to get your answer that you needed from folks. So you're on the call, he would kind of not only let you ride with it, but also, once you're off the call, he would tell you exactly kind of different questions that you could have asked and the potential answers that they could have gotten as well. So, and he understood it from the personal side as well. I would say another one is the sales center guys. So Pfeiffer and yourself really kind of helped me along the journey. It was a cool experience at the sales center. So what they did was, or what you guys did was, really brought that challenge factor. You guys made me challenge myself, and with that, I kind of learned to kind of push myself into kind of that out-of-back experience, and I think you guys really kind of opened my eyes to kind of the sales world and how exactly to talk to folks. It's easy when you're kind of in college and you're learning along the way, but when you're talking to real people, You kind of have to. You're not going to learn things right away. You guys really helped me out into kind of easing it and easing into conversation with folks and learning a process too. Everything's a process and everything's you're learning along the way. Till to this day, I'm still learning different things. And but I would say all three of you guys really taught me something that I still use basically today.
So appreciate it. The thing I want to touch on you about the sales center is you're the first sales center person we've had on it. I've held off 3 months and I couldn't do it anymore. What is it about that process, do you think, that's been replicable, whether you've been selling MLS, USL, or sorry, NASL, or software?
Yeah, I think a really good thing is about that program is that you're bringing kids from basically all over the country together to build a future for themselves, basically in something that they're truly passionate about. So I think the passion came out during the program and really wanting to, work in sports, but also make a future for themselves. The actual sales part was a little nerve-wracking at first for me, but it definitely, I think, helped me get out of my comfort zone and really find the sales voice. Everybody's sales voice is different, but you really discover exactly kind of how you could talk to people. It's very fluid once you get into it, but the program really helped out with that as well. And of course, there was competition there, which always drives folks. It's friendly competition too, but we all strive in the same thing. And I think that program really helped, bring everything full circle and understand kind of how the sports realm works and what you needed to do in order to succeed with it too. I always think it could have been a good spot for a good sports reality show. And that I always tell people that.
Yeah, no, I think we've thought about that a few times, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure what would have made it through the final edits. It would have been somewhere between like Hell's Kitchen and Bachelor in Paradise. Probably would have been.
That is right.
Somewhere in between there.
Yep.
So you talk about Rich and building a sense of community, and Rich has had to do that in some very difficult sales situations over his career for sure. Specifically, what were some of those things that you learned from Rich about building a community? Because I think that is one of the things that Rich was particularly good at, was building a fan community, and he's had to do it in some really difficult sales places.
Yeah, I think one of the first times where we spoke, trying to get me on board there, we really didn't go into specifics with kind of the position. He really got to know who I was first and kind of what I stood for and where I came from, to really understand kind of if I was a fit. And that's kind of where I go into when we were building our staff there. We really got to know who the person was rather than kind of what they're looking to do. Obviously, we asked that afterwards, but one of the first things we've asked is we really got to know who the person was. And that's kind of how I went into it after we got the staff. Once we got fans, we really got to know who the fans were. So we discovered exactly kind of what they liked, why they come out, why they didn't come out, all those needed questions that we need to ask in order to understand what that person's going through. There's always a sales package out there for somebody, as long as we understand kind of what they need instead of ramming it kind of down their throat as well. So he really kind of understood what folks needed. Obviously, there's a little sales part to it, but that personal connection, I think, really helped out.
So there's been a tremendous amount of change to the National Sales Center, and you were there, I believe, in the infamous Session 4. What were some of the takeaways that you took from it all the way back then that have helped you find success in MLS, USL, and now Core, outside of the process and learning the business? What are some of those things that you still look back on and say, yeah, I got that there?
Yeah. I still sometimes when I see all my former colleagues there at the sales center, we always talk about how what in what position you finished in overall revenue. So just thinking about actually what we went through. It was a grind. We were doing maybe 200 phone calls a day, and back then it wasn't hard, but we tested ourselves with it. And now I look back and I'm like, you know what? That's something that we should still be doing. Obviously, we're not going to push it that hard just because the sales process is a little bit easier for us. But I look back and I say, wow, I can't believe I did that when I was 22, 23, and I really pushed myself. I forgot what the number was, but I think I did close to 14, 15K while I was there in a month, and I think I was ranked 2 or 3 in the class. But just looking back at it, it's kind of cool that we did that, and I did that as well, just because of it was pretty hard, honestly. But looking back at it now, it's kind of a good driving point for me. We started. I hate to quote that song, but you started from the bottom, and now you're there. Obviously, I pushed myself in order to get that, but that competitiveness and that drive from that program really helped out to kind of formulate not only Sporting Kansas City, Cosmos, and now Core.
Yeah, no, that's huge. And you talked about pushing yourself, driving yourself, making 200 calls a day. One of the things that as I was reflecting on the National Sales Center, I think one of the most valuable things that we did was, make you guys sell, for one team for 1 week at a time, because I believe that taught you guys urgency. Can you describe what it felt like to literally only have 1 week to make sales? And it wasn't so much about building relationships. I mean, you had to build relationships because you only had 1 week. But how do you build a relationship to get them to trust you when you're calling from a Minnesota number in 1 week?
Yeah, it's kind of one of those. I always think about it too. If I get one of those phone calls I ignore Minnesota phone calls. Not on purpose, but when I see them, I'm like, who the hell from Minnesota is calling me? But you know what? I think it was the question that we asked. A lot of, like you said, maybe you have about 20 seconds at first to really lock down a potential person, because after those 20 seconds, you're going to that person is going to either hang up or he's not going to be interested, he or she. But asking those right questions at first was really key. Having 7 days to do it was obviously challenging, but I think in our heads, we knew that we had to push in order up to a point where we wouldn't annoy them. So I remember fluidly, like one person that I called back then, and I still remember it because I got a sale at the end of it, was a guy who, Colorado Rapids, a single game buyer. And literally the only question after a while, maybe this is like 190th call, I said, you know what's it going to take for you to get back to a game for about 4 games minimum? I think we were selling a 4-game pack or something like that. And he just said, make the tickets cheaper. So literally just talked to him with him and asked questions as to who he'd bring and really got to know him. I think after the 3rd call, when I called him at the end of the week, I said, listen, help me out here. I know you want to come to more games. What can we do to get this? And he said, give me a call later today. Maybe I'll feel better. And I did. And that's kind of how it happened. So it's very it was asking the right questions and pursuing the lead as much as you could without annoying them, I think really helped that sales process. So now that I think about it, I think we did 3 different teams within the month, and it's still pretty cool thinking about it.
Yeah, and it makes you very intentional in the way that you talk to people, right? Like, that every single time you talk to them may be the last time you talk to them. So you need to make sure that at the end of every conversation, you're either getting a yes, a no, or a maybe. So can you talk about and you did a great job describing that one, but what did it feel like to be in that environment where you were being that frank, that honest, with the people that you were selling to?
Yeah, it was like a war room basically. I remember at first, everybody's a little nervous, and you're kind of looking around and you're trying to figure out, how hard to push yourself. And I think we had two folks that didn't really care. Didn't just dialed, smiled and dialed basically. So, and you looked at them and you saw them kind of just do it, and you kind of figured out, okay, I have to either match them or do better than them and make more calls, or you kind of listened. You kind of tried to find what was working, what led to further conversations, and you learned along the way. So for some folks, it worked, making more calls. For some folks, it worked making less calls, but asking the right questions. So it all depended on how you wanted to push yourself. But in that environment, you kind of just learn to push yourself based on other folks as well. So plus you kind of take some questions that the other folks are asking, and you kind of put it in your own voice as well. So I think that helped out a lot.
Do you think the intention that you had to take on every phone call helped you, hurt you, and what did you take away from that? Like those honest, frank conversations that you had to have with people to your other jobs.
What was that first part? The intention of the calls?
Yeah, so like being really frank, honest, open, and very intentional about what you were trying to do. Did that help you and hurt you? And what did you learn from that you've used since?
No, I actually think it helped me for sure. I get sales calls all the time, and it kind of takes a little bit of time for the person to tell you why he's calling. So I think being straight to the point and really being honest with the person really helped out. It translated to different opportunities for me past the sales center. The amount of opportunities got less, and you figured out to ask the right questions and tell them exactly why you're calling instead of kind of beating around the bush. Like I said, you kind of learn that along the way in the sales center. But being honest was good because wasting people's time is also not productive as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. And so now that you're at Core, what are some of the major differences that you've seen between selling tickets and selling Core?
Yeah, I was actually you sent me that question. I said, "Wow, what?" There's a major differences. I mean, sometimes when I'm having conversations, they can be a little similar, but I would say the major differences are time it takes to make a sale. With tickets, with premium tickets, you could sell them probably in a month. Here, our sales process is maybe about 6 to 8 months. You're really talking to organizations who have a lot of players that are making the decisions. So the time of the sale is a little bit longer. I know you've been there, and I've been there before as well. Really, you're gonna have to decide really well how to use your budget because you only get a certain amount for the future. So you really have to kind of make that decision correctly and with a lot of folks along that decision as well. I guess another big difference is like I said, the amount of people in the decision process. We maybe go through about 6 different people within an organization just because there's different opinions out there, and there's a lot of pain points as to how or what needs to be improved in the sales department, in the sponsorship department, in the service department. So really. Going through all the objections and walking them through what other teams are doing and best practices out there is really a good way to kind of convince them as well. The money the price is a little bit different as well. Obviously, we're dealing with maybe 100K contracts for 3 years. I mean, some suites are that much in certain teams, but there's a big difference in that. So I would say time money and the amount of decision makers within an organization are the biggest differences.
Yeah, and so I think two great points because a lot of reps that are listening to this are very used to much smaller price points and much smaller sales cycles. So starting with that first one, because I think, listen, even if you're selling tickets now, unless you're selling one ticket to one person, there's always someone else that people bring into the conversation, right? So you could be selling, a husband and a wife, but you usually have to now sell the husband and the wife. And you're selling to a company, and you may have 6, 7, 8 different people in the call. So how do you think about what do I need to do? Like, what do you think about in terms of how do I sell 6, 7, 8 people the same product, but make sure that I'm finding the solutions for each person that's involved and move the sale?
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Even though you're selling tickets, you're kind of selling to the family, not only the husband. Usually, when it was a family, the wife was a decision maker there. But in terms of core, what we do is it goes back to kind of what we were talking about before. Really asking those questions as to what's going on with their business process, why do they need help, and really summarizing that for the next person in the process. So we talk to a sponsor department, and they have inventory management pain points. We really want to talk to the team as a whole and make sure that those are the only pain points that they have. If they have other pain points, we have to kind of discover that. So it's a good discovery process. It's a good process of asking questions, and then at the end of the day, it's a process of, how do we get this done, and who do we need to talk to in order to finalize it. So basically, it's kind of similar to selling tickets, but just in a larger scale and you have more time to do it. So I'm discovering that as we're actually talking, by the way.
So when you think about the strategy of, you're probably starting a conversation with 1 or 2 people, and all of a sudden you find out that you need to expand it out to 6, 7, 8 during the discovery process. Do you want to pull those other people in as soon as possible, strategically, or do you want to kind of hold off until the end and after the major discovery period before you bring those people in, you personally?
Yeah, what I like to do is bring those people at the end, because you need, with all kind of sales processes, you need a champion to sell it internally. So as long as you have that person that you started off with, or 2 folks that you started off with, and you really kind of work with them on what they're going through, how we can fix it, and how it's going to help them long term, they're going to sell it internally themselves. So it's better to start off with those 1 or 2 folks, because they're gonna be your salesperson. They're convinced that any product, season tickets or software product will help them, and if it makes their life easier, they're gonna explain it to the rest of their team and explain how it can make their life easier as well.
And if they're not bought in on it and they're losing on it, you have no chance to sell it to the broader group, right? Because if they're just like, it's pretty cool and it can do this, there's no way that there's going to be any level of enthusiasm that spreads to the other people, right?
No, correct. Yeah, you're opening yourself up to a little bit more objections. Even though you could always solve them, but you're not. It's better to kind of get 2 people on board, or you have a better chance to get 2 people on board rather than 8 at one time.
It's a bit similar to like group sales, right? So, your goal needs to be to sell those people that are in front of you, because ultimately they need to influence hundreds to thousands of people, right? And so if they're not bought in, if they're not excited about what's happening, there's no way that group's going to be as big as it possibly can be. And so, the iterations of that are really important. We tend to hear, there's going to be 6 people involved, 8 people involved. This is going to go to a database of 10,000 people. And we're like, super cool. How do I get in front of them as soon as possible? As opposed to taking a step back and being like, listen, are the decision makers that I'm working with, those people I started the conversation working with, are those people bought in enough to be our salespeople for us? Because nobody's going to be a better salesperson than the people that they that are within that organization, whether it's premium sales, software, or group sales, right?
Yeah, and then you're not going to know any internal conversations that are going to go on as well. Internal meetings take place, and you need those two folks to kind of help you battle the objections as to in group event, two other people want to do something else. You need those two people that you started off with to tell them, no, this isn't the right event. This will get us more people. This will increase the attendance, because people think on their own, and people get other folks within the organization to try to convince them for another event. So I think getting those really two people or three people, or how many amounts in that initial conversation really bought in, helps you not only when you're having those conversations with them, but also internal meetings within themselves.
So it's funny, we started to talk about some of the differences, and we kind of morphed it into similarities, which happens in sales all the time. So most specifically, what are some of the similarities that you've seen between many of the products you've sold?
Yeah, obviously, the sports factor. Everything is you're selling to folks, so you're really trying to convince them for something that they want. I would say we're selling tickets. At the end of the day, they really want it, but obviously they don't want to spend money on it. You're selling packages, you're selling sponsorships. They really want to, enjoy that premium location with their family or company. But, you just have to go through those objections in order to help them realize that, it really is good for them. And then software-wise, it's something that's going to make their life easier. They just have to realize it, and they have to push it internally themselves. So it's all, I would say, within the sports products that I've sold, it's all been something that I'm pretty passionate about. So that's a big similarity. Obviously, the sports factor is a big similarity, and also this is all that all products have been something that the opposite person really wanted as well. So hopefully I summarized it correctly. That last part was a little shaky, but I think those are really good similarities there.
I think that last one especially is an incredibly important insight, and you're a little bit. And I think people don't totally get this. You're a little through the looking glass when you do this job, right? Because you're ultimately selling to people whose seats that you are either in, near, or around. So can you talk, and a lot of times that we need to remember to do that too as ticket salespeople, right? Like, we need to remember that we were once a fan too. So we need to remember what it felt like to be in that seat. How do you bring, having been a director of ticket sales, into the conversations that you're having when you're talking to a director of ticket sales or a director of CRM?
Yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. I think I'm one of two people in the whole core software organization that was in that seat prior. So those conversations are actually kind of fun to have, because you and I have been through those times where, we don't have enough leads, or leads aren't good enough for our reps, or we have to track our reps a little bit better. I wish we could collect more data and act on that data. So I really bring that kind of experience into our conversations. So I remember having a conversation with an organization, and I told them, are you experiencing inability to really target your fans? Because I tell them, when I was in the Cosmos, we used to really target the same fans over and over again, and we couldn't really figure out a way to really act on our data and really see who are the potential other buyers that we had out there. We really had to just rely on our reps. So I really bring that experience, and I tell them, listen, I've been there before, and I wish I had this software, but I think based on what you're going through, these are the ways we can do it, because I've gone through that same instance as well. So really bringing that experience and really bringing that IMI conversations into it.
That's so crucial and so important. I think, one of the biggest things that, I always teach in my trainings is to reps is remember you're a fan, remember you were a fan, remember you were a fan, remember you were a fan, right? Because, reps can get over-programmed and over-robotic, and they lose all personality and passion. That passion for remembering that you were once a fan is always a critical part to into how you should be selling people.
Yeah, and kind of I guess it brings it around full circle. It brings that personal factor into it. Somebody will really want to know that you've been before. They like to hear that. Not only they like to hear the other person talk. So they after a while, as a salesperson, you're asking questions, but at the same time, they really want to know, okay, how do I know this guy really knows his stuff? This is a way where a salesperson or you and I can tell the other person, listen, I've been there before. This is how I felt. Are you experiencing the same thing? And it helps them feel a little bit more comfortable, and it helps them answer those tough questions that you're going to eventually ask later down the road as well.
That's awesome. That's tremendous insight. So work-life balance, technical change, is critical no matter what sport we're selling or whatever we're selling, period, or doing, period. And one thing that has always stood out to me is how positive you are. I'm not sure I've caught Erick Estrada on a bad day yet, but I'm sure they have exist. But, in general, what do you do to keep yourself so positive with all the work that sports business and business entails?
Yeah, good question, and thank you for asking that one. I would say we all, and I'm bringing this experience, I guess, an experience conversation into this question here, but we've all been there. We've all been through those struggles, the ups and downs, and you really have to, it's a really battle within yourself to really understand how far you can push yourself. If you are confident enough to tell yourself that you can, sell a certain amount of seats by a certain time, or sell enough software to different organizations, you're gonna do it. But if you kind of are thinking that you're unclear of kind of how your future holds, and you're not really sure you want to do something anymore, you're really not challenging yourself. You're really not being positive. I think being positive really helps not only a rep out, but literally anybody in any position out there. It brings into that factor of telling yourself that you can do it. I would say there's a lot of things that goes on throughout the day, and you kind of want to turn the page on a good note every single time. Either you're making the next call and you're telling yourself, okay, let's learn from this past call, and let's put into what you learned in the past one and put into the next one. Or we're building out contracts, and we're building out a strategy for a team here at Core. It didn't go well the last time. We learned from it. Let's go on to the next one, and now we could complete that sale. So it's really that positivity and that drive that I think helps me out, and also being competitive is really a big part of it too. You really want to not only stand out, but you want to push yourself and go to the next level. So I know I danced around that question, but hopefully I answered it right.
That was good. And especially that last part, talking about being competitive, I think that's tough for young sales reps, right? Because they want to be seen as a positive presence. They want to seem like they're doing well, but there's that competitive component about doing well, and sometimes young reps can really struggle with that because they don't want to make up too much noise. They don't want to make too many waves. They don't want to show their boss they may be struggling. So a lot of times that competitiveness can actually be a frustration, as opposed to a way to keep you positive about sales. So how do you turn what could be a frustration into a positive?
I would say we're going back to kind of the rep's point of view. Being competitive is not a bad thing. I mean, I'm sure if you played sports or you did anything competitive when you grew up or now, you're really making not only yourself better, but you're making other people better. So it's really sometimes when you think of competitiveness, you're really thinking about yourself. But I think of it as you're not only helping yourself, but you're helping other people. When I see somebody that's is doing better out there, you're looking at that person and you're saying, okay, I want to be where that person is, either another position or higher in the sales leaderboard. I think it's you're frustrated looking at that, but at the same time, it brings that sort of that light at the end of the tunnel that either that person can do it, so that means that you can do it as well. So I think being competitive, it's sometimes frustrating, but I think at the end of the day, it's a healthy, it's something really healthy, and it's needed in going through that process of either sports selling or any sorts of selling as well.
Yeah, and use that competitiveness instead of I suck. Okay, what do I need to do better, right? And I think that's the point that you made that I think is an incredibly healthy part about that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And then and you kind of learn more from it. You get frustrated, but it's a learning process, and I think being competitive and getting frustrated is a learning process. You have to figure out what to do better, or you either have to read more or look into different processes more. But I think at the end of the day, it's a healthy part of the whole process as a whole.
No doubt. So finally, what gets you up out of bed? What drives you?
What drives me? I would say, we all have goals. I put certain goals within my apartment. Obviously, I share an apartment with somebody now, so we look at the same goals. But at the end of the day, we want to be somewhere. You want to have a position higher. You want to you want to do well in your life when you want to look back and say, okay, I did all this and I'm proud of it, that I made family proud, but at the same time I knew that I put everything I had each day into it. We only have a certain amount of time to do certain things. So I think really going into each day and telling yourself, day I'm going to give myself a goal, and if I don't hit this goal, I didn't make my day. I didn't use my whole day as a whole. So I think that's what drives me. Using every day and learning as much as I can from it is kind of what drives me. And also getting to that end goal, might be it maybe at one point I'll go back to the team side and really help out a team, or this software company really extending its outreach and creating a bigger company than it really is. It's always, you have to give yourself a goal and you have to strive for it each day, and it'll help you for the long run.
It's fun, you hear all those people who found their way to this podcast and the in the industry. They don't vary too far off of that last answer. So it's I agree. Having an impact. There's nothing greater than finding your way to have an impact, and you don't have to have the answer to that when you wake up each morning. But if you strive to make an impact each day, regardless of where that puts you and regardless of where you end up, you'll find success. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and I agree. It's as long as you find what you want to do and putting your mind towards it, I think you're going to drive yourself. If you're competitive enough and if you're really passionate about where you want to get yourself, it's going to find its way. And of course, things are going to happen throughout your life and that are going to try to derail it. But I think as long as you stay positive and keep that final goal in mind as you learn things and go through different processes, I think anybody could be a successful person with it.
Hey, listen, bud, I couldn't agree more, and I genuinely appreciate the time, and it's always cool to watch you and watch your continued success. Even though it was only 45 days, a long time ago, it's been cool to see yourself navigate through the industry with a lot of success. So keep doing you, man.
Thanks so much, man. No, it was a pleasure talking to you, and thanks for having me too, man.
Of course.